Our next guest is Lifshy Ajzenszmidt. She is a mother to 4 beautiful children, together with her husband Mendy, who I'd also like to give a shout out to because he is the technical genius behind Sinai Down Under, and he's actually made sure that everything has run so smoothly this entire time. Together, they used to run Chabad House in Lantau Island, and then 3 years ago they moved to Melbourne, where they began working with university students. Lifshy is the co-director of Chabad Campus, a division of Chabad Youth. She also serves as the first ever female Jewish chaplain at Monash, Swinburne, and RMIT universities. Lifshy, I hear that your heart and your home are always open, and you do amazing work with university students on so many campuses in Melbourne. Thank you for inspiring and connecting the next generation. We know how important that is to keep Judaism going and keep the interest for the next generation. Lifshy, tonight something more serious. I can't imagine the pain of losing a loved one, and you lost your father at 14, which is something I know you haven't spoken about for many years, so thank you very much in advance. Can I please ask you tonight, you are so positive and happy. How do you do it, and what inspires and motivates you?
Wow, thank you so much for such a nice introduction. Thank you for having me. So I'll start and I'll answer your question. But it's so apropos that I'm speaking about my father now when his 15th yard site, the 15th anniversary of his death is coming up next week. I'll just give a short background on myself. I'm the youngest of 6 children. I grew up in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. When I was 13 years old and my father was 45 years old, he was diagnosed with ALS, and 1 year later he passed away. For those of you who don't know what ALS is a neurological disease where a person slowly loses the ability to walk, talk, eat, and then eventually breathe on their own. 6 months after he passed away, I left home and went away for school to Worcester, Massachusetts, which is a few hour drive away from New York. The community was so wonderful and loving and supportive. My family was wonderful and loving. And when I graduated high school, I moved to Israel to go to seminary. The rabbi and his wife made me feel part of the family, and they as well were supportive and were a really great source of wisdom and guidance for me. I was seeing a therapist, and after years of pain and grieving, I finally felt happy. And it was only then that Mendy and I, my husband, were set up on a date. We met and got married, and we started a family. So finally, everything is perfect. And now that I'm married, I'll only be happy from here on out, right? And as kids, and sometimes as adults, we tend to think that there's a fine line that you cross when all of a sudden everything is better. So 1 minute you feel enveloped in darkness, and then the next, the angels are singing from heaven and the clouds part with the sun shining through onto your face as you look up to the sky, and then everything is fine. And that's the path from darkness to light, isn't it? Unfortunately, as much as that sounds so wonderful, it doesn't happen that way. When I was 15, I wrote a letter to my future self for 10 years down the line. It said something like, "How is everything? Is it better? Are you happy now?" So yeah, the pain of watching my father die and the agony of being confronted with mortality, the pain of a lost childhood, it got easier. But life goes on and other things become difficult as well. So how do I stop going down in a spiral of grief, pain, and confusion? How can I live my life in a state of happiness and contentment when things seem to be going badly? There were a few lessons that I took from the occurrences that happened in my life. And the first one is this: as a 13-year-old, my connection to God was so strong. I remember I was home alone. I was sitting in my parents' bedroom. My mother was with my father in the hospital. My brother hadn't come home from school yet. And my sister was in Canada for seminary, and my other siblings were already married and lived far away. And I was sitting on the floor crying and talking to God for an hour. And it felt to me as if he was sitting right next to me, like God was my father, like God was listening to every single word that I was saying and was taking into account the thoughts and feelings of this 13-year-old. My connection to God, to Hashem, was so strong, and all I had to do was open up and talk to him, and it didn't matter where I was or what I was doing. The second lesson I learned was positivity and gratefulness. Throughout each day, I find the smallest things to be grateful for. I was looking for my other shoe and I found it, and I just whispered to myself, thank you, Hashem. I got to school on time, thank you, Hashem. I was looking for something in my pocket and found it right away, thank you, Hashem. And I caught the bus without having to run, thank you, Hashem. And I try to focus on the good aspects of people. I try to focus on the light and the positivity in each situation. The third lesson I learned was the importance of opening myself up to help and guidance from others. When we're down, we can feel like no one understands us. We don't need anyone's help. We don't even want anyone's help. Can't you just let me wallow in my sorrow and my self-pity? I mentioned before that I had so much love, so much guidance and help from those around me. And the only way for it to be effective was for me to accept it. And thank God I did, because without that help, I don't know where I would be today. Our mind is a muscle. When we train our minds to connect to God through the seemingly small things in life, and when we train our mind to be grateful and happy throughout the day, then when the so-called darkness or sadness or difficulties and stresses seep into our lives, our minds are stronger and able to come right back around to the light, to seeing the positive in our situation and to be grateful and thankful for everything that we have. So does this mean that I am happy and positive all the time? When people see me on the street, they say, well, you've been through so much. You're so happy all the time. How do you do it? But that's not true. I'm not happy and positive all the time. I get sad. I wallow in my pain. I have difficulties in my life, just like everyone else. But I can feel confident to tell my 15-year-old self that, yes, I am happy now. And yes, I am better now. Because being happy isn't an end to the story. It's a constant journey of love, light, and faith. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I want to hug your 15-year-old self, and thank you again for opening up and sharing your story, but also for reminding us that no matter what is going on in the world and what is going on in our lives, we can train our minds to actually be strong and see the light and the positivity in each situation. And the biggest lesson is to remember to find things daily to be grateful for, even though they might seem small or seem like things we've taken for granted. If we keep doing that, then we will be able to be positive. So thank you.